flash games, the fast food of gaming. They're great for quick relief, but they're usually not meant to be played for too long. But as a kid, they were a great way to pass the time and oftentimes can be addicting. And there was many sites back then to choose from, but for this video, we're going to talk about Nick.com. While Cartoon Network was the first big site I got into playing stuff on, Nickelodeon was probably the one I ended up playing the most overall. So we're going to talk about a few shows from the channel and the games that accompanied them. That way I can take a look at some others I didn't include here.
Get on America Online to get all the Nick.com you need. AOL keyword Nick.
He's a phantom.
Danny Phantom, one of Nickelodeon's most fondly remembered shows, which was created by none other than Books, I Created Your Childhood Hartman, also known as Books, Baby I Got Your Money Hartman, Books, The Con Artist Hartman, Books, Nothing But a G-Thing Hartman, Books, Do You Know Who You're Dealing With Hartman, Books, All About the Benjamins Hartman, Books, I Lied to You Hartman. It was one of my favorite shows at the time, and even now still holds up pretty well for the most part. As for the games, oh yeah, there's an issue here. So, unlike Cartoon Network's website, which has most of their old shows on the site, Nickelodeon does not. As for the ones that are on the site, this is what happens when you try to play any of the games they have.
What you're looking for isn't here anymore. Let's go somewhere else.
That's just self-centered and racist.
So, for this entire video, I had to find other sites to play them on. Thanks a lot, Nick. Anyway, the first game up is Urban Jungle Rumble. A title that, with the wrong context, sounds a few steps away from being a bad racial slur. It plays similarly to a watered-down version of Mortal Kombat, as you are given a set of basic attacks, but are also able to perform special moves by combining certain keys together. It takes a little getting used to, but it functions well with its responsive controls, and each attack is rewarding when you do land a hit. Fright Flight is an aerial dogfight where you're able to customize your ship and just basically fight against another character, even yourself. You have 3 basic attacks to work with, and since the AI isn't particularly bright, it is very easy to beat initially until the difficulty increases. It's an okay game, but nothing special. Freak for All is a side-scroller that revolves around the villain Freak Show as you try to stop him from using the bootleg Infinity Gauntlet. I'll just say right now that the worst aspect of this game is the combat, as it's not particularly responsive to certain commands. You'll end up dying a lot if you try to fight every single enemy along the way, as even one opponent can drain your health pretty easily if you're not careful. This is on top of trying not to get hit with the lasers that can hurt Danny in either his human or ghost form. So the best way to get through this game is just avoiding everyone and staying on top of the buildings. That is until you get to a boss battle that requires you to use a very specific attack to win. Not only are the controls finicky in how well they respond, but you also have to time it right or else you either get hurt or you end up not hurting the boss at all. It's a bit of a pain to get through, but at least the music is nice and offers more of a challenge compared to Fright Flight. The Ultimate Enemy Face-Off is another fighting game, but one that allows you to customize the appearance of your character. Now, this one in particular, I remember being advertised on the channel with some sort of contest thing being offered, if I recall correctly. I mean, with that level of push it was getting, this game had to have been pretty good, right? Right? Like I mentioned before, you have the ability to customize your character, but this is all superficial as it doesn't make a difference in your strength or speed when fighting. As for the fighting, unlike the relatively quick pace of Urban Jungle Rumble, this is very slow and basically consists of hitting your opponent, hoping they don't block it, and then waiting to block their attacks. But what really drags the whole experience down is that you have a limit to how many attacks you can make within a certain amount of time. If you spam either attack too quickly, you burn out and have to wait for your attack to reload. This really had no business being in a game like this and just seems like a way of making the game harder than it really is. And, like Freak for All, the attacks also seem to randomly decide when to respond. It's not as bad as that game in terms of responsiveness, but at least the fighting isn't the only thing that game had going for it. When your only gameplay mechanic is to fight and you can't even deliver on that completely, that's an issue. Why am I looking so much into these games anyway?
Cat Scratch!
Hey, remember Cat Scratch? That show that sounds like that one Ted Nugent song? Cat Scratch Fever? No? Oh, okay. But seriously, this was part of a string of short-lived Nickelodeon shows from the mid-2000s when the network seemed to be trying to experiment with different styles, with none of them sticking except for a few. And Cat Scratch, created by Doug TenNapel of Earthworm Jim fame, was one of the ones I remember liking quite a bit at the time, but who's to say how it holds up now. But enough about the show, we're here to talk about the games. First one up is Cat Fight, which is another aerial fighting game except with water guns. Because cats don't like water. The experience is pretty short-lived as it doesn't take much to take down the others, which also applies to you. Not a particularly memorable experience though. This Means War is a strategy-based game where you get to play as either Mr. Blick, Waffle, or Gordon. You take turns utilizing one of the many attacks or defenses until there's only one cat left standing. Unlike the previous game, this one can last for quite a while as health drains pretty slowly and the AI sometimes is pretty stupid about its decision making. If you're looking for something quick to play, this one might test your patience, but it's fine for what it is. Cat's Me If You Can is a driving game that requires you to dodge obstacles and fight other drivers that challenge you. The game itself controls just fine, but it is hampered by the bad overhead camera that makes it nearly impossible to drive fast without running into stuff since you can barely see what's ahead. Thankfully, there isn't a time limit, so you could just drive slowly, but where's the fun in that? The boss fights are also pretty uneven though, since you're not fast enough to dodge all their attacks and they do take away a lot of health. I also want to say that the game seems to have taken some influence from the band Gorillaz. Like, look at the Freeway segment, which looks like something from the 192000 video, or the music itself sounding like a remix of Rock the House. And the main menu bears more than a passing resemblance to the cover of their first album. Look, even Murdoch is in the game. The last Cat Scratch game to talk about is Spendango Fundulation, which is based on the second to last episode of the series. And, like the Ultimate Enemy Face-Off, I too remember Nickelodeon advertising this one to coincide with the airing of the episode. The game is all about timing as you have to hit a certain sequence of buttons at the right time or else get zapped. I remember this being a lot harder as a kid, but I actually beat this pretty easily on my first try, so at least I can say it's not frustrating or unfair. Hey, remember The Exorcist? That show that sounds like... Okay, I'm not doing this again. Created by Carlos Ramos, the guy who did the Twins Crimson pilot. It too was another show that was pretty coolio with its sharp and lineless art style that looks like Samurai Jack meets The Incredibles with its 60s future spy aesthetic. And the games are good at keeping the style intact. Recipe for Disaster is based on the first episode of the series as you have to stop a robot from running amok in the house. You have various traps set up with the objective being to activate them at the right time when the mom bot is in range. Every level begins with you trying to figure out where the traps even are since they're hidden within the environment pretty well. And when you do figure it out, sometimes it's hard to tell where the trap is even going to hit since there's no shadows or anything to indicate where exactly RoboMom is. Supreme Accuracy is a shooter where you, well, shoot certain targets with the hopes of calming them down before they rampage. I don't think I ever beat this game, as even now I wasn't able to get past the first level, no matter how careful I was with my aiming and ammo quantity. Either I was doing something wrong, or you had to have near perfect aiming, but whatever. I'd recommend to give this one a pass, it's not really worth it. Last game is Virtual Insanity, as you are driven insane by how many times you have to hear the red Mojo Jojo knockoff laugh at you through the screen. I say this because literally every version of the game I checked out online is unbeatable. The very first thing you're supposed to do in this game is push the box over to activate the button, thus opening the gates. However, the box is glitched, since it doesn't let you push on it without you falling over. And even if you are careful with it, the button is glitched too since it won't open the gates. There's nowhere to go except for this corner where you're at least shielded from Glowface's taunts. The worst thing is that I remember this game working as a kid on the actual site for me, so for me to not be able to actually play through it is a shame. Am I not allowed to relive my childhood? Is it too much to ask for? I guess some dreams aren't meant to come true after all.